Memories of Appu. JVP's Unsuccessful Insurrections in 1971. Written by Elilan Tamil.
After the last presidential election in Sri Lanka, a wave of support for President Anurakumara Dissanayaka has begun to sweep across the country. Anura and JVP are not that good. They want Tamils not to get any rights. In 1987, they opposed the arrival of Indian peacekeeping forces to help the Tamils. Those who did not accept the provincial council system and divided the provincial councils, which were united as North-East. Those who have prepared many Sinhalese for the war to destroy the Tamil tigers. Such opinions also found among the Tamil people. The purpose of this post is not to say what is right or wrong. But through this, I want to share with you my memories and the people I have met in the past, the days of the JVP First Arms Revolution in 1971 and the impact it had on Jaffna Peninsula. I was 9 years old that day when the Premdasa government shot dead JVP leader Rohana Wijeweera. He was unpopular among Tamils. Only 2 Tamil people were in sorrow for his death. One of them was a local thief. Another one was a former antisocial person. Apart from this, I don't know that Tamils regret the death of JVP leader. Don't think how I knew all this at the age of 9. We are the wartime children. The war had took our childhood and given us such powers. That's why even 10-year-old children had been fighting in the civil war. Now, let's get to the point. It was an exceptional period. As the Indian Army had to leave Sri Lanka, the LTTE were moving around with weapons. Antisocial elements and EPRLF used to carry out activities like robbing people's houses, kidnapping people for money, etc. On the day of Deepavali, I went to the market with my uncle to buy fish. A bearded, EPRLF man who collects money in the market says, "Hey, there are new faces swinging here." He was shouting loudly with fear at the new arrivals. The next evening, the news of Rohana Wijeweera's death started spreading everywhere. In our village, there was a middle-aged local thief named Meenakshi. In the morning, he steals chickens and coconuts, sells them for money and comes to our house after drinking the liquor. He was allowed to sleep in the existing cow shed in our house. A man named Thappan Anna, a tobacco seller, used to visit our house frequently. Meenakshi had come home on time that day and Thappanna also came to our house. Both of them were waiting for the 6 p.m. Tamil news on national TV. The news was telecast that Rohana Wijeweera, who was under arrest, was shot dead as he tried to escape. Appu was killed. Sadness on both faces. Before, so many killing happened around us. For all that, a sadness that was not seen in anyone was visible on the faces of these 2 on that day. That whole night, Meenakshi thought of his fellow prisoner and said, "Appu, my goddess," as was drunk. I don't know how Rohana Wijeweera got the name Appu. Maybe the Tamil prisoners who were there may have called him like that. However, following this chapter, I will refer to Rohana Wijeweera as Appu. Appu was born in a poor Sinhala family with no socio-economic strength. Family poverty did not affect Appu's education. Being a talented student, he had the opportunity to study medicine in Soviet Russia on a scholarship. He was thrilled that he was going to study in a country that would teach communism to the world. But he was shocked by the dictatorship going on inside the Soviet Union under the banner of communism. Appu is a man who does not shy away from mistakes. He began to tap into the problems in the Soviets. As a result, the scholarship was stopped and he had to return to Sri Lanka. His medical education had been interrupted, but Appu didn't feel sorry for it. He had a big dream. He wanted to make the island of his birth, Sri Lanka, a model country of real communism. Returning to Sri Lanka, without going over to the Soviet parties, he began to look upon Chinese communism as a model for his future struggle. At that time, the Soviets and China were hostile countries. This enmity continued until the war between Cambodia and Vietnam. Shanmugathasan. His home place was Jaffna. He is the only Sri Lankan to meet the Chinese revolutionary leader. Appu returned from Russia and joined Shanmugathasan's Chinese Communist Party. Shanmugathasan was a peculiar man who believed in promoting communism through organizing processions. Appu who guessed this would not work out, and he started the JVP or People's Liberation Front in Sri Lanka. As Appu did not know the depth of the problems related to race, religion and language that had taken root in Sri Lanka, he considered that there were only two classes in Sri Lanka, the oppressor and the oppressed. There were communists in Sri Lanka even before he was born. They spoke philosophies that the ordinary people did not understand and were alienated from the people. Appu, who thought that 5 classes were enough to make an ordinary man understand communism and the fundamental changes that would take place, started preparing the youth by preparing 5-day training course manuals in Sinhala and Tamil. Their organization maintained contacts with the Chinese and North Korean embassies. Albania gives support from outside. In those days, the relationship between China and Sri Lanka was deteriorating. So, the aid to them was going through the North Korean embassy with the support of China. An even worse regime than that of the recently ousted Gotabaya, led by Sri Mao Bandaranaike, was taking place that day. Foreign imports were halted due to lack of foreign exchange. People queued up all day for even a bread. Famine and oppression were rampant everywhere. Appu's organization began to prepare 15,000 youths for an armed struggle to liberate Sri Lanka, declaring openly that they would liberate the people from this deadly regime within the next year. A batch of weapons to carry out the revolution had been brought to Sri Lanka from North Korea. Youths were given weapons training in the forests and farms. A large sum of money was also provided through the North Korean embassy to maintain the fighters. Everything was going well. However, Appu's organization made a mistake. They protested in front of the US embassy in Sri Lanka and tried to set it on fire. So they were in the surveillance of US intelligence. The US began actively monitoring Appu's movements. The United States informed the Sri Lankan government of Appu's plan to take over Sri Lanka by the new year in April 1971. The Sri Mao government took action and arrested Appu and 300 other leaders in March. Appu and others were imprisoned in the fort in Jaffna for security reasons. At this stage, Appu's organization and the countries behind them failed to postpone the plan. A Chinese arms ship suspiciously docked in Colombo harbor with weapons for militants. Weapons were new to the organization, so unexpected explosions started happening all over Sri Lanka. The media started calling them Che Guevara fighters. Even the ordinary people knew that a major attack was about to take place within the new year. The leaders of the second rank of the organization marked the day for the revolution. On the evening of 5th April, when the song Neela Kobi started airing on Radio Ceylon, several police stations in Sri Lanka were attacked simultaneously. More than 100 police stations and many villages came under Appu's fighters' control. A group of Appu's guerrillas had entered Jaffna to free Appu and the first-rank leaders who were detained in Jaffna. 500 Tamil speakers or Tamil guerrillas were found in the group. Another group fought hard to attack the capital and take control of the Colombo port and airport. Unfortunately, their entire plan had already been revealed to the Sri Lankan government through the American intelligence agency. So, the Sri Lankan government had already taken all its efforts to save Colombo. This led to a fierce conflict around Colombo. As Appu's fighters did not expect this, it suffered a major setback. In time, they could not capture Colombo or rescue Appu. As a result, they were unable to get weapons from the Chinese ship that was docked in the port of Colombo. Although these efforts failed, Appu's organization did not lose hope. Some ports came under their control. At one such port, they tried to bring in a North Korean weapons ship lying at sea. The attempt was prevented by the Indian Navy. Knowing this, the Sri Mao government immediately closed the North Korean embassy and deported the officials. The Sri Lankan government had sought the support of the world to defeat the coup. The British government immediately brought and stockpiled large quantities of arms from Singapore to Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Indian government tightened its surveillance of Sri Lankan at the ocean boundaries. The Indian Navy attacked and chased away a Chinese warship that made a last-ditch effort to move a Chinese weapons ship moored in Colombo harbour to a port controlled by Appu's fighters. The turmoil in South Lanka was also seen in Jaffna as well. The local thief. In those days, there was a cottage industry of cigar rolling in our village. Places where the cigar industry is going on are called Churuttu Kotil. A man named Raja Kariyar had a Churuttu Kotil. Around 20 to 30 workers were working for him. To supervise the workers, Raja Kariyar appointed one of his relatives as manager. Raja Kariyar visits the kennel at least twice every day, scolding workers for no reason whenever he comes. He would cause many hardships to the workers, such as reducing the salary, writing fake invoices, using them for his household work. Meenakshi, a young man from a poor family. Having lost his father at a young age, he dropped out of school and worked as a cigar peddler in his kennel for a few years. With his income, his mother and 3 sisters could afford at least a quarter of a stomach of porridge. After a few months, the cigars started disappearing. Raja Kariyar knew that only the manager could steal with such skill. Even so, he wanted to correct the relative and stop the theft. Meenakshi is a movie freak. He had come a little late to work that day after watching a movie on the night screen. Accusing Meenakshi of having stolen and sold cigars, Raja Kariyar tied him to a tree and beat him for a whole day. Hearing this, he cursed his mother and sisters, who ran away. After those atrocities, nothing was stolen from the kennel. Meenakshi, accused of theft, but he was unable to work anywhere. Poverty turned Meenakshi into a complete thief. It was the 3rd day when Appu's fighters started revolution. The curfew was in force from evening to early morning. The Che Guevara fighters are destroying the temples, locking the Buddhist monks instead of cows, and ploughing the fields. They are killing the bosses and seizing the properties. Like this, many rumors were spread. Rumors were rife even within the Raja Kariyar kennel. On their faces, the workers wanted Che Guevara to come and beat Raja Kariyar in front of them. For the first time, the Raja Kariyar began to fear of the workers. Can Che Guevara hear too? He also asked a few people. The news reached Meenakshi that Raja Kariyar is afraid of Che Guevara. To take advantage of this, Meenakshi and his theft partner decided. At that night, firecrackers were lit and thrown at Raja Kariyar's house. Here comes Che Guevara! Che Guevara! Screaming, Meenakshi's associates ran across the street. Disturbed by this, Raja Kariyar and his neighbors ran away from their houses. Meenakshi's band of thieves broke into houses and stole what they found. Months after the incident, Meenakshi was caught while he was trying to sell Raja Kariyar's watch. In the end, he spent a year in prison with Appu in the Jaffna jail. Antisocial. Tappan Anna had an handsome elder brother, looks like cinema star A.V.M. Rajan. He was known as Vishwalingam during the days of this incident. Vishwalingam is not a great devotee. Even then, he was going to many temples in Jaffna, such as the Mavadapuram Kandasuvami temple and the Pandarithalaichi Amman temple. One evening, when Vishwalingam was thirsty, on his way home from work, he drank a bucket of water from an Amman temple near his village. When someone saw it and told what had happened to the temple manager, the temple manager was shocked because of weird old custom. He had complained to the police that Vishwalingam tried to set the temple chariot on fire. A few years ago, the police were at a loss to trace the people who burnt the chariots of the Kandasamy temple in Mavadapuram. They wanted to end the case by pinning the crime on Vishwalingam. Thus Vishwalingam went into hiding. It was the third day when Appu's fighters started revolution. As the police's attention was focused on Appu's fighters, Vishwalingam drank liquor and returned home after many days by singing "What could be done if the desire of the poor and the ringing of temple bells are different." Later, hold his last-born daughter in his lap and sang that "Sleep tight. Sleep tight. Until the golden world is visible." And he waited till late night for the Che Guevara's march to the village with red flags. But the golden world was not born, nor did Che Guevara come. A month later, while hiding in Tappanna's house, the police came and caught both of them and threw in jail for a fake case. Together with Appu, they were in the same jail. Vishwalingam, who came out after his sentence, did not go to the temples. He baptized and changed his name again to Vincent, worked in a cinema theatre in Jaffna, and lived a peaceful life. Mid of 80s. There were around 30-40 Tamil arms groups were operated in Jaffna in those days. An unpopular arms group, in order to distinguish themselves from other groups and to gain popularity, dragged Vincent from the theatre and shot him, tied upside down, to a lamp post. The banner of "Antisocial" was tied to his leg. Because all the countries of the world had gave their weapons, the Sri Lankan government had gained immense power. Appu's fighters were unable to deal with the Sri Lankan army due to a lack of weapons and an inability to implement plans as expected. The Sri Lankan government told the people that they were the mercenaries of foreign forces who are disrupting good governance. This same news of the Sri Lankan government was told by Kumar Asuriyar to the Tamil people on radio. We can excuse him because he was the puppet of the government. But it was Colvin R. De Silva, the pillar of communism, who addressed the same government message to people in Sinhala language. He was given the agriculture ministry in Sri Mao's regime, much like parties get a bar license today. Communist lion, Peter Kahneman, addressed in English that armed terrorists should not be helped. As a young man, he had fought armed in the Spanish Civil War, and now armed men were seen as terrorists. This was not a change due to his age, but rather a change that would have occurred if he had been given a money-making housing ministry under Sri Mao's brutal regime. Bribery and corruption have ruled Sri Lanka for the last 70 years, in alliance with Tamil Sinhala sectarianism. After a month-long battle, Appu's organization was defeated, losing 5,000 youths and tens of thousands of supporters. Surrendered second-rank leaders were put alive on tires and fattened in front of the people. The remaining members were imprisoned. Eyewitnesses used to say that, even when they were being burnt, the hands of the Appu militants were raised. Appu was convicted of sedition and sentenced to life imprisonment. When the sentence was handed down, Appu chanted, "You can kill us, but you cannot kill our voices." At a time when people have lost faith in your politics, our brothers will take over the government with a new politics for the people. There is still time for dawn. Let's wait.